Okay, people, today I wanted to talk to you about and share my reasons why I moved to Ghana in the first place. Let me start from the most important angle. And the most important angle was family and subsequently my sons. I'm raising African boys. I'm very young, both under or 5 and 1 and a bit. And the culture in the UK, the culture that I grew up, the culture that I understood and growing up in the UK in inner city East London was that as black boys we were supposed to be cool, and to be cool was to be badly behaved. Education was not celebrated. If you were smart, you were mocked, boffin, those kind of things. I'm showing my age right now. So I wanted to raise my boys in an environment where, education excellence was a norm. It was something that was cool. I didn't want them to feel any social pressure to be something that they're not. Another big reason concerning my sons is around the criminal culture that emerges in the UK. You may not realize it as parents, but the criminal influence in the UK is very prevalent amongst the black culture. I think it's some degree of social engineering, but it's extremely prevalent. If you look at some of the top UK rappers who dominate charts and dominate the social discourse amongst the youth, most of them have criminal backgrounds. Some of them come out straight from prison and then release their album. All of a sudden they're successful and they're being pushed. And wherever you live, whether it be inner city, London, or out in the sticks, that is what's cool. That is the in thing that's happening when it comes to kids and their experience. I moved out to the really lovely area, really picturesque area, family oriented, and you think you'd get away from those influences, but we have um, like a skate park where we live. And I remember taking my son to the skate park, and he was only 3 at the time, and he's riding his little bike, his balance bike. And there were kids there, older kids vaping with a speaker, playing music. And the music was all violent drill music, right? And they were no more than 10, 11, maybe 12, 13. And I was like, hey, look, turn that off. There's little kids here, there's swearing and what have you. And it's being blasted. You know how kids are, right? I don't begrudge them for it, but that's the influence. And it creeps into every facet of young society. Another reason why we chose to leave is antenatal is the word. There's an energy of, most young people or most millennials don't want to have kids. It feels like when you're a family and you go out and about, you're impeding or impacting on people's peace and happiness by having kids. There's a lot of tuts and rolls of eyes and things like that when you have kids, and they want to play and stuff like that. It's not a family friendly place, unless you move out where we were. It's by family friendly. Um, yeah, it's just not the ideal place, and it's very isolating, and it's not family friendly from the structures that are in place. Because cost of living is so high, you are forced as a family to have two-parent working households, which means you have less time for each other as husband and wife or partners. You engage less with others who are going through experiences that are similar to you. You're very isolated in nature. What's happened, me being a Londoner, is that most of us have grown up with our cousins, etc., especially Ghanaian folk, in and around the same area, right? My cousins were dotted around East London and Essex. And then as we've grown older, and because we've been priced out from further out, when we've had our families, we've had to move to different, further out suburbs. And in doing that, it meant that we came together less. We became more isolated. So it is a very isolating experience if you don't take care of your experience and your connections with people. Another reason why we moved out of UK, and this was more actually, I realized this after I left, to be honest, is inherent over or discrete discrimination. Now, this isn't something that I would call upon as a reason normally, because actually I feel like we've grown up in a time that has really been advantageous for us to become the best. You know, we were always drummed into our heads, we got to be twice as good, twice as good, twice as good. And I think that resonated. So we became twice as good. And if you were smart, you reap the benefits from that. But with the national discourse around immigrants, immigration, those kind of things, some of the madness that's happened, around violent attacks in the UK, the rise of discrimination and frustration from people native to England is on the increase. And I don't really blame them, to be honest. But what happens is it manifests in the children. We had an incident at nursery where we were called in because one of the kids said they didn't want our son playing in the tent with them because there's no black or brown boys allowed. And it's like, thankfully, my son wasn't at a point where he really understood what was being said, but that was said nonetheless. And there were other examples from other families in our area where it was like, oh, why does your face look like that? Blah, blah. And it's from the kids. And it's because these kids may be coming from homes of frustration that things are said. I mean, it has to be. Where else do they learn that? You're not born that way. So that is an inherent problem. And another thing is, recently I had a good friend of mine, considering a brother, moved to the same area because we as parents of younger kids were always like, oh, this area is really nice, it's better than London, it's picturesque, we've got a lot of greenery. And he was like, yeah. And then he moved him with his family. His kids are slightly older, young teen and a little bit younger, and started going to school. There's a school bus that picks them up, and then he started getting abused on the bus by other kids. And that happening was like really sad, heartbreaking. I felt really bad because obviously we'd recommend this area, and then your kids go through that. But thankfully, I think it's resolved itself. The parents met and those kind of things. But those kind of microaggressions are prevalent, and I think the frustration's boiling over because some of the native or the indigenous people are even struggling themselves, and they feel, and not even feel like this, the media has engineered an enemy, and the enemy has always been the immigrant and the boats. So that's another reason why we left. Another reason why we left is because inherently we're from Ghana. This is our environment, and I see that there tends to be a bit of there is a mental health crisis amongst black males in Western countries. I'll pick UK for example. Everyone watching this in the UK will know somebody who's gone through some sort of mental health disaster being in the UK, or just in the UK. And I've had people I know go through it, and I always thought and wondered, is it inherently because we're just in the wrong environment? It's not our environment. The winters are dark, cold, very little sunlight. The stress level's extremely high, a lot of work, a lot of pressure with money, a lot of coping mechanisms, drugs, drinking, etc. And whereas here, there seems to be and feels like there's a lot more peace, especially if you're okay monetarily. You don't have a smoking culture here, whereas you do in Europe. It's like everybody does. And I think it's just those coping mechanisms. I think there's a real mental health issue emerging in the West, because I just don't think you can be that. Some people don't return for a lifetime. And I think if you're in inherently the wrong environment for a long time, I think it can have consequences for your mental health. The school system, that's another reason. I mentioned before that the school system doesn't allow for you to take your kids out after 5 outside of term time, which means that you all go on holiday the same time, which means you're all engineered towards paying a higher cost during peak times, those kind of things. The schools always seem overwhelmed. They're always short of staff. They're always complaining about shortness of staff, always complaining about they need funding, they haven't got funding. Sometimes they're combining year groups because they haven't got enough teachers. And I find that with that environment, you're going to get people teaching to the middle or the average of the class. And then the exceptional, or the ones that need help, are going to get left behind or loiter. So I think there's pressure on the school system. I don't think they pay teachers well enough. It's not an attractive profession in the UK. Teachers off on leave. It's not ideal. Another reason why I left the UK is I want my kids to experience an outdoor life. not be wedded to screens. And the population demographic I've mentioned many a time before is very much young. So the parents are young, so it's easy to find friends ourselves amongst the parents. So it's really something else, really good. Another reason why I moved to Ghana was just realizing that Africa's moment is now. And I do a lot of research and a lot of reading around Africa and people's views on it. As I've said many a time, the demographic profiles, how they're set up, all those kind of things. And I realized that actually at that time it was 5 years, right? So up until 2030, this is a key, crucial moment to be engaged and operating in Africa and African business, because the future markets of the world are really going to come from the sub-Saharan regions, the southern world, as it were. And that's where the youth is, that's where the natural resources are, and everybody wants a piece of it. And with the Western world changing, fewer older population, in the future there'll be fewer taxpayers, all those kind of things. Everybody's got an eye on Africa, governments alike. And so I wanted to be a part of it, and I had a means to do so and to start the conversation. Another reason is just that, I'm from Ghana. I'm from Ghana. My parents are Ghanaian. I've always come here, and, I've got a bit of the language. My wife's Ghanaian, and we planned it so that we would be here, right? I did another video around my 10-year plan, but long story short, we always had a connection, and we always did things that tied us to Ghana. And I was doing really well in the corporate world, but I couldn't see my growth beyond doing what I was always doing. I did it for 12 years. I didn't really want to just 5 years down the line look and say, oh, I regret I didn't move to Ghana. I didn't try it. I didn't experiment. And now that I have, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Not because I've all of a sudden become a super rich man or anything like that. It's not the case. It's more about the exposure, the openness, the skills that have been forced to develop. This is an environment of creation, whereas the West, I feel, is like an environment of consumption. That's another reason why. What was the trigger moment for me in moving to Ghana? So it was a couple of key moments at work, actually. So I got passed up on a promotion one year where I had a stellar year. And when that happened, I went and found out I tried to understand what was the reward of actually getting the promotion. How much were you going to get paid extra? And I found out it was like 4 to 5% for the biggest jump in my career. So I was effectively going to become a director. And for that 4 to 5%, you're expected to find 1.5 million for the company in sales. And I knew what that would take from me. So I opted out of the next year's rungs of promotion in order to focus on Kuro and focus on Ghana and focus on my family. And that was so much more rewarding. And as I was going through that process, it became more and more apparent that my next promotion was to become a business owner. And I had to do that for myself because I knew the growth and the learning opportunities that were going to be there. I didn't want to do that in any other environment than Ghana. We'd planned it for a long time. If we didn't pull the trigger, we had literally had that 1 6-month moment in time where it was like, we have to try it now. Otherwise, we never try it. And now we've tried it, we've never gone back. Who knows? We may go back in the future, but for now, it's not right for me. Why else? I think I've just come to a place in life where my quality of life for both me and my family reigns supreme over everything else. The past career accolades, etc., they're not important to me anymore. They don't put food on the table, etc. I mean, career can, but the accolades themselves didn't. It gets to a point where there's diminishing returns. And if I really wanted to look at the next chapter of my life, which is my most important chapter, it's my point in which I'm most mature at this moment in time, I have to take decisions that expand my capability. And I couldn't do that just doing the day-to-day in the UK. This environment, it forces you to be creative. Every time I've come here, whether it be a summer holiday or whatever, the creativity level just explodes. And every time I go back to the UK, the consumption level explodes. All of a sudden, it's like, no, I can't be bothered to go and do what I said I was going to do. I'll order a Deliveroo, sit at home, watch a movie. No, here, I'm up at 5 a.m. I'm in the gym by 6. I'm a lot healthier. It's just a quality of life thing as well, completely different quality of life, you know, and I haven't been deterred by some of the narrative that comes from sometimes the elders about how it is difficult here. I'm not going to pretend that it's not difficult here. It's difficult to make money, etc. But what's easy often isn't worth it. I could have taken an easy route, stayed where I was, been easy, and then 5 years down the line, be like, oh, this isn't fulfilling. I think fulfillment is the ultimate thing to keep pursuing, and that's what I'm able to do here in Ghana. All right, guys, that's it for now. I will speak to you in the next one.